You might have clicked on this video hoping to find out a little bit more about the EcoFlow Wave 2 portable air conditioner. Well guys, you're in the right place. And it's more than just an air conditioner, it's also a heater. With that in mind, think of this as an ultra portable HVAC system to help tame the elements while spending time outdoors. I've used the Wave 2 this last month to keep the perfect climate while camping in my minivan. It's the time of year when the days are hot and the nights are cold. So I've been able to run the Wave 2 in both heating and air conditioning mode for several cycles. And the biggest takeaways that I've learned so far while camping with this in my minivan is that when the vehicle is not in direct sunlight, the Wave 2 will help lower the internal temperature of my van by about 20 degrees Fahrenheit relative to the ambient temperature. And another lesson I've learned is that the battery will last about 3 hours in maximum cooling mode, and it can last up to 8 hours in eco mode. So if you plan to use this device for its maximum cooling capacity, I strongly recommend that you consider getting a campsite that has shore power so you can run it on its maximum mode non-stop. Otherwise, I would only plan to use the maximum mode for about an hour just to bring the temperature down after the sun sets inside of your vehicle, and then run it on eco mode for the rest of the night. Even by doing that, your battery will realistically only last for between 6 and 7 hours because you're going to consume more power than you expect trying to lower the temperature inside of the vehicle. Speaking of batteries, this has a 1,159 watt-hour lithium-ion battery rated to return about 800 cycles with 80% of its maximum capacity remaining. The nickel cobalt manganese chemistry of this battery helps keep the weight down, tipping the scales at just over 17 pounds. This battery has an 18 watt USB-A and a 100 watt USB-C outlet, and it's designed specifically to pair with the Wave 2 head unit. I really want to emphasize pairing because this battery requires the Wave 2 head unit to charge, so you won't be able to use this as a standalone power station. On a positive note, it only takes about 5.5 hours to charge from empty when hooked up to a wall outlet. Okay, so enough about the battery. This is the EcoFlow Wave 2. It is both a heater and an air conditioner. It operates as a heat pump. So when it's in heating mode, it's not going to have that bright red element inside that's burning air. It's actually going to use the same process that it normally would use to cool the air, but in a reverse cycle manner. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds about how that process works, but think of it this way. When it's in heat mode, hot air will come out of the front, cold air will escape out of the back. And when it's in air conditioning mode, cool air will come out of the front and hot air will be exhausted out of the back. Because of its method of heating and cooling the air, this system is much more efficient than those typical space heaters that you would buy for $10 to $20 at a place like Walmart or Amazon. In fact, this is rated to put out 5,100 BTUs in air conditioning mode and 6,100 BTUs in heating mode. The watt equivalent, which is a little bit of a misnomer, is about 1,500 watts in air conditioning and 1,800 watts in cooling mode. There is a ratio called the energy efficiency ratio, and that ratio for this device is about 9:1. And what I mean by that is, this thing will consume about 550 watts in both its maximum heating and maximum cooling modes, but it puts out 5,100 BTUs. And so it actually is more efficient than simply heating or cooling the air with an element. The easiest comparison I could make would be to take one of those red element space heaters that burns electricity to make that red element, and suppose I put 1,500 watts into that heater. It's going to also give me around 1,500 watts of heat. But due to the energy efficiency ratio of this device, you're putting in about 550 watts and getting about 1,500 watts of heat out of it. Since the system works that way, it does take up quite a bit more space when it's in use. As you see it right here, it doesn't have any of its venting. But when I set it up in my camper, I want to make it so that when I'm pulling in cold air, I'm exhausting the hot air out of the vehicle. In addition to using a large exhaust duct, there's also an intake duct, which I don't have with me right now because I don't use it in my minivan camper. The most efficient way to use this system is have fresh air coming into this intake area and an exhaust going out from a separate compartment to wherever your cooling or heating is occurring. So let me get this set up. That thing just pops right on. Although EcoFlow does have a drain-free mode for the air conditioning, this drain is required to use heating. And I think that it's more efficient to use the drain if possible when in air conditioning mode. So when I have it set up, I'm gonna have this drain and this exhaust vent leaving my minivan. And I don't know if you can tell through the clouds behind me, but I am about to get a massive storm. So I'm gonna put out my awning real quick so I have a place to work to finish up this video. So just in case that weather gets out of hand, I've got a little shelter just under my awning so I can keep doing this video. So I don't mind that it's gonna rain, and I also don't mind that the HVAC doesn't necessarily lower the temperature more than about 20 degrees relative to the ambient temperature. And the main reason for that is the device pulls moisture out of the air. So even though I'm kind of sweaty and muggy right now, that 20 degrees difference also has a drier air, which feels much more comfortable. So let me get that HVAC set up and get it going so I can get more comfortable air inside of the minivan camper. The Wave 2 head unit weighs about 32 pounds and the battery weighs 17 pounds. So with the hoses attached, that's about 50 pounds just to move this thing around. So it's not exactly light, and portable is relative to what you're gonna be using this for. If you're taking this on a camping trip with a tent, you'll probably wanna bring like a wagon or something to move this thing around. But for my use in the minivan camper, this thing is basically the perfect size. The only hard part for me is moving this so that it'll sit good inside of my vehicle. Just make myself a little ledge up there and slide this thing into place. If you recently saw my teaser video for the Wave 2, I was using this contraption that I came up with, but in the end I decided to not use this anymore. I'm just gonna use the standard vent that came with the device, and I'm just gonna smash it into my window, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Slide this in, lock it into place. And I wasn't exactly finished with coming up with crazy ways to try to seal off this window, so this is test number 2, the pool noodle. So I angled this pool noodle and I cut this to be about the right length so that I could slide it into this window and leave just enough space for that vent to come through. And I already cut that one a little short because I made this for that metal attachment. But once I started using this, I discovered that I could just slide this piece straight through the hole here. I've done better, but I've definitely done worse, and this works for now. So this is gonna be expelling hot air throughout the night, and I can already feel that hot air coming out of it. And I wanna be able to use this system as much as I can tonight, so I'm gonna hook up that shore power into my minivan so I don't have to worry about electricity at all. The AC adapter for the Wave 2 does have a built-in ground fault circuit interrupter, so I'm gonna put this inside of the van so if it does rain, it doesn't get wet and trigger a fault. Since I currently have shore power, I'm also going to top off my EcoFlow River 2 Pro that is attached to my EcoFlow Glacier refrigerator. That way all of my stuff is topped off as the storm passes, and I'm not too worried about solar power over the next day or two. It's a little darker than I'd like it to be in here, so I'm going to get some lights set up so we can see a little better as we're filming. So the way the system's working right now is it's pulling in air on the front from inside of the minivan camper. It's cycling it through the refrigerant and pushing out cold air right here. On the back side, it has fresh air going into the evaporator, and then it's pushing out the hot air that it's producing as it's cranking through that refrigerant through this vent right here. What I want to do is try to isolate those two zones so that inside the passenger compartment where I'm going to be, I have that fresh cold air and the front is kind of isolated from that fresh cold air. So to do that, I'll just put up my stealth curtain rod and wrap it around. In this case, because I'm not really stealth because I'm in a campsite, I'll just wrap it around like that. And no, it's not a perfect seal, but it does a decent job. So now I've got that nice cold air right here, and I do have a little bit of cracks on the side, but it's never gonna be perfect unless I make something purposely to close that compartment. While the HVAC runs, I'm gonna close this door for a few minutes just so I can talk about the app. So on the app, you can see all the devices that I currently have connected. I'm gonna click on the air conditioner, and when the air conditioner pops up, it's gonna show me all the status of the air conditioner. EcoFlow has been updating this firmware about once a week since I've had this product over the last month. So that's something that I do like about EcoFlow. All of these devices have been updated frequently, which from a consumer perspective sounds like they don't have all the kinks worked out. But from my perspective, as we the users are also the testers, we discover problems. EcoFlow updates the firmware and sends those updates out as soon as they can to make sure that we're getting a good experience out of our products. And these things are not exactly cheap, so I'm glad that they're supporting them after sale. It's about 80 degrees outside, so I don't feel like playing with the temperature right now. I'm gonna click on the menu and hit the max mode. Once I hit that max mode, I can hear that fan hitting max fan, and I can also, from back here, just barely feel that wind. So the wind isn't super strong back here, but it's better than other devices that I've tried where you have to use a little hose to route the cold air almost exactly to where you want that point of cold air. In this case, without sunshine, this thing will lower the internal temperature of my van by about 20 degrees in about an hour. I'm almost 5 feet away from the air conditioner and I can actually feel that cool air on me. But I said something earlier and I want to reiterate that here. If I was sitting in my minivan, because I have tried this several times, with this air conditioner set up exactly as it is in direct sunlight, it will just barely be able to maintain the temperature inside the vehicle. Yes, it does dry the air, and yes, it does feel good, but it's not realistic to expect this to cool a vehicle like this in direct sunlight, because as we know, vehicles are already going to be hotter than the ambient temperature in direct sunlight. I have no insulation, and this thing is essentially a greenhouse in direct sunlight. Now that I'm in the shade, it's about 80 degrees outside, and this thing will not have a problem lowering the temperature to around 60 degrees inside. To give you an idea of how good this thing is working, it's currently 82 degrees outside and 76 degrees inside, and I've only been sitting in here for about 20 minutes with this thing running. So it does actually cool the temperature inside of the van, and I haven't been waiting very long. I slept perfectly in my minivan last night with this HVAC system running. I had it set on air conditioner mode at around 75 throughout the night, and it did a really good job of keeping all the moisture off the air. But this morning when I woke up, I turned on the heat, and as soon as I turned on the heat, I started to see condensation on the window again. That's kind of an interesting thing that happened because it was crystal clear when I pulled my shade down this morning, and as soon as I turned on that heat, I started to have that condensation. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the AC mode back on just to see if it will pull that condensation off of the window as quick as it put it back on the window. I wish I had that camera going when I turned the AC back on. As soon as I turned the AC back on, all of that condensation immediately evaporated. That's just nuts. In fact, let me try this. I'm gonna turn on the heat again. I got it on heat, and just for the fun of it, I'll turn it up a little bit. So after messing around with the heater and the air conditioner for a little bit and trying to figure out why I got all that condensation when I turned on the heater, I've decided that I think it's like a microclimate thing. So it's humid, the air out here is humid, but the air in the van is like perfectly dry. So as soon as I open that window or open that door, the moisture started to condensate on the windows. And I just sat in there with the heat running for a little bit, and it did dry the air back out. So heater, air conditioner, it doesn't matter. It does dry the air out. But as soon as I opened that door first thing this morning while the sun was still rising, that condensation accumulated instantly. I got some gnats through these cracks last night, so next time I go camping, I'll get a new pool noodle. They're only a couple bucks, and I'll make sure I cut it really tight so that it fits in there perfectly when I have my window crack like this. Now I'm curious to know if I got any moisture in my drain last night, so I'm gonna start getting this thing undone to get on the road. So I would say that's about half a quart of water, and it made that in about 8 hours last night. So it smells like water. I know it's probably not safe to drink, but if I was alone in the desert and I had no water, I would probably drink it. So this HVAC system seems to work pretty good. I've been using it for about a month now, and I plan to keep using it throughout the summer. So let me know if you have any questions about how it performs in the comments, and make sure you check the links in the video description to find out the current price and any deals that EcoFlow may have on it. So I got this thing shut down, and I'm gonna hit the road. I was curious if this thing could actually run for 8 hours in its eco mode setting as EcoFlow claims. So last night around 5 p.m. I started an eco mode battery rundown test, and it actually performed for about 8 hours. And eco mode wasn't anything to write home about, but it did perform as I would have expected it to. The fan was running in its lowest setting, and it was pulling hot air out of the van. It also pulled quite a bit of moisture out of the air in the van. Reducing humidity is a way to make it feel like it's cooler, even though the temperature is higher. So although the air temperature wasn't necessarily cooler in the van, that moisture reduction made it feel less clammy and less sticky, and more water was actually pulled out of the air than when I did the test the other night with this device. There might also be more water in this valve right here, and the reason I say that is this valve is a little higher than the base of the unit, so if I tilt it back a little, more moisture still might come out of the hose there. So if you'd feel comfortable in that 80-degree temperature range with a minimal amount of fan, then this thing performs good enough. And you can definitely expect to get that 8 hours of runtime out of it. One thing I would recommend to kind of help keep the air flow inside of your vehicle is getting something like a small fan like this, so that when the HVAC system's running in eco mode, you're still able to get plenty of air circulation. This thing was probably like 20 bucks on Amazon, and it blows quite a bit of air. And you can put that in front of the outlet of your air conditioner and help circulate that cool air around the vehicle. So now I'm left in a predicament where the EcoFlow 2 has an empty battery. My mini fridge is at a 100% state of charge, and my EcoFlow River 2 Pro is at around 50% state of charge. So with my one solar panel on the roof, I have to decide which item I want to maintain charge with. And for me, it's going to be the power station and the refrigerator, because I want to have that cold drinks and cold food. And I would only recharge this again if I had access to shore power again. So that's something to keep in mind. You're really only going to use this for one night without shore power, unless you have a massive solar panel array. With that being said, I do plan to keep this air conditioner in my minivan camper for the remainder of the summer, and I do plan to use shore power so that I can have that second level of comfort that I normally wouldn't get. If you want to know more about the EcoFlow Wave 2, check out the link in the description. There you can find the price and any updates to the device that EcoFlow puts out. Thank you so much for watching my video, and don't be shy, say hi in the comments.